Denver Mayor Michael Hancock wins the battle, it's possible his progressive opponents are winning the war. We'll take you inside the strategy at work.
It's so great to see more women running across Colorado and winning.
The closest race in the city, and tons of voters could not be bothered to care. Colorado caps prices for a life-saving drug with a warning. And a government agency declares, we are the news now. What could go wrong? Did I mention we're talking about RTD? That's next. Denver voters ordered a steaming cup full of change last night, but then cut the waiter off mid-pour. No, that's enough. Not all the way to the top, please. So Mayor Hancock will return to lead city government for 4 more years. But voters cleaned out 3 incumbents from city council, so the mayor's rubber stamp for rapid dense development, that stamp just got sticky. Mayor Hancock's heir apparent got clipped. Former council president Elvis Brooks lost to Candy Cedabaka, a Democratic socialist who's going to bring an unabashedly leftist voice to council. Expect her to speak out loudly when she disagrees with the mayor. Councilwoman Mary Beth Sussman went down faster than the old homes being scraped for new development in her district on the east side. Amanda Sawyer leveraged discontent over development to beat Sussman. Wayne New is the old councilman for Cherry Creek. Chris Hines beat him last night. Denver City Council will now have a female majority and a more skeptical view of unchecked development. So City Council looks more like the city than ever before. Number of women on council. The fact that City Council will be 38% Latino in a city where 30% of people are Latino, this is not an accident. Our Sonia Gutierrez looks at the group that's training Democratic women to change the face of Colorado politics.
5 Latinas serving for the Denver City Council and a majority women.
What's important here is that for the first time ever in Denver, the number of Latino residents will be equally represented on City Council.
Yeah, it's not a surprise or a mistake.
Mika Rosenauer isn't just saying that to say it. She's the executive director of Emerge Colorado, a progressive organization that trains and supports women to run for office. They're just one of several groups in our state creating a pipeline of minorities into elected office.
Clearly, we are seeing the fruits of the labor of those leadership organizations.
9 News political expert James Mejia says that's why this map looks the way it does. The darker the red, the more Latinos in the district. Check this out. Latina Candy Cedabaka beat the incumbent in District 9. Jamie Torres won District 3. Davy Ortega won at large. Amanda Sandoval in District 1. And Stacey Gilmore in District 11.
With 5 of 13 council members with a Latino background, the Latino voice is going to be heard. You're going to hear about the issues that are important to the Latino community at the same kind of representation for the first time in history with the Latino population. It was a historic election.
We've heard the phrase, the future is Latino. Well, Mika says that future is now.
Because we have seats at the table, and if we don't, we need to pull up our chairs and create one.
SoCal Emerge is behind a lot of the big Democratic wins. Jenna Griswold, Secretary of State, Brianna Titone, first transgender legislator in Colorado, and now Candy Cedabaka, first LGBTQ woman of Colorado of color in Denver's City Council. Altogether, 50 women across the state in office right now coming out of this Emerge program.
I think one of the most interesting things about Emerge is there are a number of groups that train people to get into politics for the first time, often starting small. They are both starting with lesser known races and just shooting straight for the top.
All levels. So smaller government, top government. And what they say is that that's the point. You need to make sure that you have that support system so that if you want to pass anything, you've got that support on all levels of government.
Yeah, all of a sudden classmates become allies in elected office. Interesting. All right.
Exactly.
Thank you, Sonia.
Yeah.
So there's likely to be a recount in the race to decide who will conduct Denver's recounts. It's apropos, I guess. Paul Lopez is claiming victory today in the Clerk and Recorder's race, but even he acknowledges that his 315-vote lead over Peg Pearl is likely going to an automatic recount. What our politics guy Marshall Zellinger noticed is the tens of thousands of Denver voters who did not care about the clerk's race.
The Clerk and Recorder's office is in the Webb Building downtown. Okay, you know what a recorder is, but what about the Clerk and Recorder?
Like you asking what does our office do, people really don't understand what we do.
Like the current one, Deborah Johnson. What does she do?
Number one, administrating the elections for the city and county of Denver. Number two, we administer the foreclosure properties, and also we give out marriage licenses, which is also part of the recording process that we do for real estate.
For instance, the clerk and recorder was responsible for the marriage license of President Dwight D. Eisenhower before he was president. He was married in Denver. Yet 20,000 of you are not impressed. That's how many turned in ballots without filling out Paul Lopez or Peg Pearl. And in the May election, 40,000 left the clerk and recorder's race blank. I get it. You opened up your ballot, saw a race you weren't expecting, and didn't know what to do, or didn't care.
One of the things that Denver did this election cycle is we had an interactive ballot on the web. We had links on it.
Remember this for next election. You can use the online interactive ballot, find links to learn more about the candidates, and make a hot cross decision. Hang on. Oh, look at that. I just happened to have it. Wait. I forget it.
That's nice.
Denver is still getting used to voting in a clerk's race. Until 2006, it was a mayoral appointed position, Kyle. But then in November 2006, there were long lines and software issues. So the solution was elect the clerk. But here we are 13 years later, 12 years later, still trying to figure out how to tell people you should participate in this.
Yeah. Speaking of turning back time, you went on a little odyssey to get that recorder today.
I went to my parents' house in Aurora, and it was exactly where I had hoped it was, in my childhood closet.
Very good. If you want to see some awesome pictures of Marshall back in high school with a luxurious head of hair and some questionable fashion choices, those are on his Twitter page. They were questionable, trust me, but so were mine, my friend. Thank you. Whoever becomes the Denver clerk and recorder is going to make a salary of $151,000. Not too shabby, huh? So that got us interested in the perks of public service. Mayor Michael Hancock, he makes $175,000 starting next month. His final year in office, 2022, he'll make $188,000. By comparison, Governor Jared Polis makes only $123,000, only $123,000. But something tells me with his mega millions, he's not sweating it, you know. Denver city councilors start at $94,000. Council president makes more. By 2022, city councilors will get a pay raise to $101,000. State legislators in Colorado are considered part-time, so the newly elected ones, they're making $40,000 a year, and those on the older pay scale, $30K. The price of insulin has become so expensive these days, there are people who risk their own lives by skipping doses or by rationing insulin. Well, that should change for a lot of people in Colorado. But first, patients need to know what's been done and the potential hidden costs. Here's Anusha Roy.
There are roughly 400,000 people in Colorado living with diabetes, according to the American Diabetes Association.
Yes, we heard from people in the committee hearings who came and testified that they were using less insulin than they should, that they were relying on free samples from doctors' offices.
That means there are a lot of people making risky choices, to the point that some people are paying anywhere from $475 to $1,000 out of pocket a month.
If you have type 1 diabetes, insulin is like oxygen.
Democratic Representative Dylan Roberts wants people to know about a new law capping how much people will pay for insulin starting in January to $100 a month for people with insurance in Colorado, but not through federal programs like Medicare.
And we've worked with the insurance companies through the crafting of this bill and passing the bill, and they got to a place where they were neutral on it, and they believe that it won't raise insurance premiums in any significant way.
Neutral is important since insurance companies will absorb the cost difference. One of those companies, Cigna, is on board with its own plan to cap payments.
But there may be a hidden cost.
Since money dictates this story, Michelle Leek with the Colorado Health Institute is onto something and will be paying close attention to premiums and the other big player in insulin prices.
What the legislation doesn't do is mandate that drug companies only charge a certain amount.
On that note, that is the second part of this bill, directing the Attorney General's office to investigate if drug companies broke any laws as insulin prices have been going up over the last couple of years. There are three major insulin companies. Two of them got back to me today saying they support the payment cap. It's always also putting money away for the state to look into those complaints if people are paying too much for their medication. Kyle.
So if somebody gets in a situation where they're in a pinch, they pay, and then they think, I think that I got taken on this, what happens?
Yeah, well, added to the list of insurance complaints, and the Department of Regulatory Agencies has a whole website and phone numbers that they're setting up for this, and we'll get all that information online because hopefully people won't have to use it, but if that happens, they'll have a resource.
All right. Anusha, thank you. On tonight's edition of our segment, Presented Without Comment, Colorado Public Radio reports that RTD is starting its own news operation. From the government agency that brought you the A-Line comes an RTD newsroom to produce its own news coverage. They should do a segment called Is Next Working Today? There are small businesses and there are tiny businesses.
I know how to utilize small spaces.
More than a dozen years into a restoration project, the work is still not done.
Part of the fun is suffering a little bit to maintain these, but it's worth it in the end.
It's a locomotive in Colorado with a Hollywood backstory. And an Uber driver who takes Colorado's high country very seriously. That's next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is an Uber for tough terrain in the high country. Check this thing out. Next viewer named Susie calls it a modified snowcat. Is that a geo-tracker? My vehicle identification skills on this show are terrible, and you guys have called me out so many times on that, but it reminds me of one of those little, you remember those little things? Anyway, she sent us pictures of the vehicle headed up Kepler Pass near Crested Butte. There's the Uber sticker right there on the driver's side front window. I love that. That's the most Colorado thing we saw today. Send photos to next@9news.com or like Susie, get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext.
Today's weather word, virga, V-I-R-G-A, virga, precipitation that evaporates before it hits the ground. Although here along the Front Range, we do expect that some of these clouds are actually going to be bringing some heavy rain to us. These thunder showers will continue to build along the Front Range foothills, and as they continue to move off the foothills, we do anticipate that some of you will actually see some heavy flooding rain after a day with highs right where we'd expect them this time of year. All the heavy flooding rain is right along the Colorado-New Mexico line due to this area of low pressure spinning to the south of us. But one or two of these little heavy rain is going to come through between now and probably 9 o'clock tonight. So just be aware of that. All the advisories for heavy rain down around Pueblo and Walsenburg. And so as we move through the forecast for Denver for tonight, chance for a shower early, then clearing, our low at 53. Sunshine and 82 tomorrow. Isolated storms heading into the weekend with the cooler, windier day out of the weekend, Kyle, being Sunday, and then rain back in the forecast as we kick off next week.
All right, Kathy, thank you. So I've been on this quest lately to find great coffee shops in Denver, new places. Never been to the one that we're about to visit, but I also never thought to look in a car. Our Brian Wendland grabbed his camera and went to check it out.
Take one of those, you got it.
Owning a coffee shop has its challenges.
I started off over on Wewata, and then I suddenly made my way over here.
But running this place leads to issues most baristas don't have to worry about.
I do have to watch how much I drink because there is no restroom in here.
Matthew Pendleton is a mobile barista. He got the idea for On the Road Coffee when he saw a similar business on a trip to Thailand.
3 weeks after I got back, I bought this Beetle and just slowly started putting it together. And I've been doing it for 3 years now.
He parks his 1968 Bug on 16th and Wine Coupe by Union Station Wednesday through Sunday. And he makes enough money to support his real passion.
I started this whole project so I could focus more time on artwork. I do these abstract drawings with ink or graphite.
Matthew's work hangs on display in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and his coffee bug has become a piece of art in its own right.
Look, yeah, every day is picture day.
Even people who don't want coffee stop by.
I mean, I'm glad to put a smile on people's faces just for doing a simple thing.
3 years in, even the biggest challenges haven't slowed Matthew down.
I've had my generator stolen before right here. That's one thing I've witnessed.
The positives of running a coffee shop out of a car like this tend to outweigh the negatives.
There's plenty of good things that I've seen. Just simply people having a good time. Just walking around, just enjoying themselves.
And when you love what you do,
nice, thank you.
Even the slow days in a small car seem to go by fast.
Yeah, there we go.
For Next,
Matthew, thanks again.
I'm Brian Wendland.
She's beautiful, and she's famous.
Other locomotives don't cost near as much to restore, but this particular one just is so famous and has such a following that we just continued to do it even though it was costing so much.
And she's back home in Colorado. And what do you say when you're talking about the name of this park in Denver? If you're perplexed, you're not alone. Next. All right, let's play What Do You Say? Tonight we're talking about a park that's in Denver's West Highland neighborhood. Starts with a P. It's named after a well-known woman who used to live in that part of town. Our viewers Deb and Kyle asked for help pronouncing it. So we called up Denver Parks and Rec and asked them, what do you say?
The correct pronunciation for the name of the park is Ferdesteller, so Ferdesteller. So the park was acquired in 1937, and it was first known as Yates Park. But by Denver City Council resolution in September of 1951, the park was dedicated to Elizabeth Ferdesteller. She was a local philanthropist who lived in the area near the park, and it was dedicated to her and renamed Ferdesteller Park. You always have people that try to pronounce the P. Ferdesteller.
Elizabeth Ferdesteller passed away in 1953. All right. Is there another place name in Colorado that you just skip over speaking aloud because you don't want to mispronounce it, sound foolish, or whatever? There's a ton of them. Email me suggestions, next@9news.com, or give me a shout with the hashtag HeyNext. She's home. Rio Grande Southern Locomotive number 20. Back home in Colorado after a $1 million restoration project that took 13 years. A narrow gauge engine was being worked on in Pennsylvania. Still needs months of detail work and paint. But the folks at Colorado Railroad Museum in Golden say she's worth it.
She has a great history and a large following among rail fans. She was a movie star. She was in the movie Ticket to Tomahawk in 1950, which was also a bit part for Marilyn Monroe. It was used on a lot of rail fan trips in the early 50s. It's just kind of a favored locomotive of a lot of rail fans.
The museum plans to have locomotive number 20 fully restored, shine to beauty by next year. We'll have your feedback, including an awkward suggestion, next. It's a sign that they really do want you to pay attention to the speed limit. Check out the speed limit on Sergeant John Stiles Drive at Highlands Ranch Town Center. 17.5 miles per hour. Are they going to bust you for going 18? Are they really going to do that? That seems petty. A few of you have sent us pictures of this sign, so we called Douglas County for an explanation. They told us developers can pick the speed limit on private property. Town Center is owned by Shea Properties. They went with 17.5 miles per hour to get your attention, to try and get you to drive carefully and slowly in the parking lot. I would say it's working. Send the signs you see to next@9news.com or get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext. Your feedback, Debbie Christensen called out Marshall in his sweet recorder skills, noting that Marshall, a recorder, is played with the left hand on top. Deanne writes in about our election coverage, asking that Marshall and I be fired due to our extremely biased reporting against Mayor Hancock. She says that is not good journalism. But Ald Hendricks writes in to say that we are Hancock cheerleaders. Says I should get a Team Hancock tattoo on the small of my back. It's where my Polish tattoo is, man. You can't just put one on top of the other.